Good morning, good day. We're now continuing the Maamarim, the Ruah HaMoishel 1924 from the previous Rebbe. We're on page 349, and I'm dedicating today's learning to Harav Chaim Zev Malinowitz, who just passed away on Thursday, I believe, Thursday night, and we're in the middle of a shiva. And just on a personal note, like I wrote in the email that I sent to you, or the WhatsApp, how you doing, Harry? He was first of all, I don't know if Bet Shemesh knows what type of Talmud Chacham that they had there. He was not just a Talmud Chacham; he was a world Talmud Chacham. I'm convinced he could probably put any Rav and any rabbi in his little back pocket in his knowledge. He probably was a Baki in Shas, but not only a Baki in Shas, he knew Chasidus. I don't know if he knew Kabbalah, I don't know that, but Chasidus he learned, and he knew Musar, and he knew Chakira. And you see this from the shiurim that he gave. If you take a look at the shiurim that he gave both to men and women, and I know people who attended the shiur, and I've spoken to them when I was there. He is listed as one of the general editors of the Art Scroll Schottenstein Shas, not just for the English Shas, but for the Hebrew Shas too. Now you all understand what that means to be a general editor for Shas. Yeah. Means you have to know Shas. And we could say that he came to Eretz Yisrael 17 years ago, which equals Tov. Vayechi Yaakov be'Eretz Mitzrayim shva esrei shana. Yaakov's best years were in Mitzrayim. And I believe we could say that his dream was to be in Eretz HaKodesh. He didn't have to come to Eretz Yisrael. He chose to come. He had a position in Muncie as a posek, as a Rosh Kollel. And he was already doing editing, I believe, for Art Scroll. So, he had his entire family and the Rabbanim. So his comfort, both spiritually and materially, was in New York. And nevertheless, he got up and he went to Eretz Yisrael. That's another point that I didn't point out in my letter. In addition to that, something else I didn't point out is that he never moved to Bet Shemesh. You know that. He traveled, he told me. He came by bus, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 in the morning, or maybe for Shachris, I'm not sure. And he would go back at night. I know myself, when I gave the Tanya Shiur, it started at 9:15. I saw him sometimes at 9 o'clock, 9:15, still in the shul, his shul. So he literally was all day there. And he didn't want to move. He wanted to live in Yerushalayim because the Kedusha of Yerushalayim. For Shabbos, he came naturally, but they offered him, housing, and they would take care of him, and he turned that down. And I think that's another very special insight into a person who comes to Eretz Yisrael and he decides not only living in Eretz Yisrael, but he makes a decision to live in Yerushalayim, and he can easily be moved over to another city, and he chooses not to. That tells you a lot about the person. So his knowledge of Torah was massive. In addition to that, and I think everyone will agree, anyone that knew him, he was very what we call today open-minded. Now, what do I mean open-minded? I don't mean open-minded in the sense of accepting all the mishigas, but I use myself and Chabad as an example. The average Litvisher Rav would never allow a Lubavitcher to come into a shul to give a Tanya Shiur, and even to give a drasha. It's highly done today. In the 40s and 50s, it was much more easy. But today, everything is so compartmentalized, and I use the word, unfortunately, divided, and my shita, not your shita, which is interesting. Last night I attended Rabbi Jacob J.J. Schachter's lecture on the Rav and the Rebbe at the Talmud Torah of Flatbush, Yoni. You must have been, right off Avenue J on Coney Island Avenue. And there were 150 people, mostly elderly people, and because I wrote a book on it, so I came, and I know Rabbi Schechter, I interviewed him for the book. So he spoke about this issue of how the Rebbe and Rabbi Soloveitchik, they didn't allow this, difference in certain shittas to get in the way of their relationship. Anyway, Rabbi Malinowitz, not only, so I was there, I came for Shmuel's Chanukah Sabayis in 2017, for those that remember, and I was talking to Shmuel and to some other people, and they said, you're here, why don't you meet a little bit the people, because we started to speak about a koilel, so it's good to meet people, so they told me that there's this Rav in the shul, and it's a prominent shul, and he's a prominent Rav, so I reached out to him. And the answer was not, should you talk? Of course you should talk. The question is when. How are we going to fit you into the Shabbos schedule? And he said to me, the slot I have opened is between Mincha and Ma'ariv on Shalosh Shudas, on Shabbos. So, but he said, people go home. They don't stay in shul. That's the meaning over there. I don't know why they go home. There's no Shalosh Shudas in shul. So he said, but don't worry, I'll take care of it. I didn't know what he's going to do. So I came to shul, and, I'm the only guy with a kapota and a hat, and, the beard, you see from all sides, it's a Lubavitcher, right? So they know a Lubavitcher is in their shul. What's a Lubavitcher doing in a Litvak shul for Mincha? I daven Mincha with them. So after Mincha, as soon as Mincha's over, he runs to the podium, to the beam or whatever, and he gives a bang, and the respect that I saw that they gave him was tremendous, and that's the way it should be for any Rav. He gives a bang, and he says, Rabbi Sai, I'd like you to stay and listen to what I'm going to say. Because they're all starting to walk back to the door. And Rabbi Malinowitz says, don't go. Everyone stayed. No one walked out that door. And he starts telling them, and these are the words that I remember and I wrote. He said, I was waiting for this day. This is what he said. Rabbi Sai, I was waiting for this day. When is a Lubavitcher going to come to me and ask me to speak in my shul? It seems like it never happened in the 15 years that he was there. I don't know why, but that's the... He said, and especially a Lubavitcher who's a Talmud of Rabbi Yoel Khan. And he says, I'll tell you why I'm telling you that. Because I had 3 Rebbes. This is what he says to everyone. I had 3 Rebbes. I think he said Moshe Feinstein, who gave him smicha. Rab Abba Berman, who had a special yeshiva in Muncie for Mitzuyonim, and he was a Talmud of Mir, a big Talmud Chochem. And then he says, and I couldn't believe it, Rabbi Yoel Khan. I mean, this is a litvak in the greatest, you know what I'm saying? What does he have to do with Rabbi Yoel Khan, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Chayzer? I was shocked. I was waiting. And he says, I used to learn for several years Tanya in a special Tanya that Rabbi Yoel Khan gave for myself and other Bacharim in Muncie while I was at Abba Berman's yeshiva. And then later, privately, he told me more about that. I'm not going to now get into the details. There are more details about that shir. But anyway, he said this to the entire Khan. And therefore, Rabbi Say says, Rabbi Dalfin is here. He's going to say a few words. I want you to stay and listen. And then he quoted a Gemara wait, it didn't finish there. He quoted a Gemara in Beya. Shmuel, the Gemara says, Manichin chaye olam l'chaye shah. They forsake everlasting life for temporary life. It means when you go away from Torah learning for not Torah learning, So Rabbi Malinowitz applied it. He said, here you're going home. Yes, you want to go home to do Shalosh Shudas, but Rabbi Dalfin is going to share Torah with you. And he said that the Gemara, and he didn't mince words, he's not a Lubavitcher, the Rebbe wouldn't say the negative, but he said what the Gemara says. The Gemara says very severe thing when you do that, like terrible punishment or death. I don't forget now, whatever it is. And basically he threatened them. I heard it. He threatened them. But they took it. They took it in a very positive way because they had a love for him and they knew him. In other words, he was very direct. Rabbi Malinowitz wasn't a rabbi who was a politician. I want to tell you that. Many rabbonim and rabbis are politicians. They're careful with what they say. Rabbi Malinowitz, what he believed, he said. He didn't mince word. Now, naturally, he was a Talmud Chacham, and he was guided by Halacha and Shulchan Aruch. But he said what he believed. He wanted everyone to stay and listen to my drasha. That was his introduction to me the first time I met the person in my life. Now you tell me another Rav who would do that. It's hard to find, if you could find him, something like that. Everyone protects their little turf. You know what I mean? He was open-minded. Now, so I started to give the shiur. But not only did I give the shiur, he asked me, he wants a course syllabus because he wants to advertise it in his bulletin. First of all, before that, he paid. And I don't know if he paid, but he put he had printed, and it cost money. I don't know him, the kuppah, the congregation. He spent money on advertising the Tanya shiur. And then there was a point the shiur was getting a little schwach, and it was late at night, and I got up very early, and I was tired, and I gave the shiur, but I didn't do the syllabus. So he says, Rabbi Dalfin, I need the course syllabus to put in the journal. And he nudged me. He mamish was, and I was like, I couldn't believe this. Here it's a Tanya shiur. We have 6 to 10 people, which is wonderful. B'nai Torah, it's very good. But it's not, 50 people coming to a shiur. So what if I don't write the course syllabus, He wanted the course syllabus, and he nudged me about it. And that was another insight into his seriousness and how he was impacted, really, by Rabbi Yochanan. So in his chus, we dedicate the learning. We don't understand. Yes, Shmuel, yes.
One more thing I want to mention, Rabbi Malinowitz, I found out. Somebody I know was having difficulty with one of their children, and they had to be put in a special school in the U.S., this type of difficulty. It was very expensive. He didn't have the money. This is recently. Each month was $11,500 a month. You knew Rabbi Malinowitz, I don't know how well. Rabbi Malinowitz covered 1 month. So I'll cover a month for you.
It was $11,500 a month.
Yeah.
I didn't see. So that's something that's a new thing. Yeah. Yes, Moshe. Yes.
Just to add to it, Rabbi Malinowitz was my Rav when I first came here. It was a base tefillah, one of the few English-speaking places you could go, and he always, made an effort to connect with me. One of the things I was going to mention was that when we were going through difficulties with our marriage and my wife and stuff, he came to our house. I asked him if he could maybe spend some time. He said, I want to come to your house. I don't want to do it here. I picked him up. He came to our house, and he sat with us. He talked to my wife, whatever. In the result of trying to get therapy, he offered to pay for a whole series of therapy,
Wow. Tremendous.
Unbelievable.
Tremendous.
So he was in that way, and he also told me I forget what it was, but anyways, incredible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the other day when my oldest son made Aliyah, it was not easy. He was 11. He was a top student in Canada, but here he got all the Hebrew Gemara. He said, as he got older, he wanted to go back to the States and study at the yeshiva in Far Rockaway. We didn't want him to go. Rabbi Miller said, you do what's best for the child. It's best for him. We looked into it, and we sent him, and he was,
It was a great, yes. You want to say something, Yoni? Or Hillel?
So I'll tell you a story happened about, my daughter's 12, so when she was probably about 2, 3, so 10 years ago, my wife took my kids to Yerushalayim on the bus. She took, so they were sitting next, my wife and my daughter was sitting next to Rabbi Malinowitz, like on the other side of the aisle. And my daughter, she points at Rabbi Malinowitz. She was like, 2, 3. And she goes, "Hey, you're a rabbi." She says, "You're a big rabbi." So he said to my daughter, he goes, "Well, yeah, a lot of people think so, but they don't really know." Oh
yeah. He was a very fine person, very fine. Look, well, David Dalfin Taka Mashiach should come, and all the people that were touched by him should continue doing Maisim Tovim, learning and davening, giving tzedakah, and learning Mishnayos, Nishmasai, and it should taka be that we don't understand. His shlichus was finished. Infection here and infection there. 67. You could cut it any way you want, but the shlichus, the mission was over. The Eibishter said, "I need you back here for now." So he goes back. We are saddened. It's not just like we said. It's a community issue of a magnitude level, and we don't understand these things. Don't try to figure them out, because you won't be able to. And just go with positive thinking. Do things like we're learning now. And this week of Shiva, so we're on page 349, and in this paragraph, the Rebbe asked a question in the beginning, a contradiction between two chazals. One chazal, Navei Zara, the Gemara says the first 3 hours of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sits and learns Torah. And then we have the other chazal would say, whenever an individual Jew sits and learns, HaKadosh Baruch Hu learns right there and then with him. So the question is it only the first 3 hours of the day, or is it every time, any time when an individual studies? That was his question in the beginning. And to answer this, he began discussing, and one other question, he uses the language in the Gemara of Vedazot is, Sholosh Shoyos Rishonos Yoshev V'Oisek. Hashem sits and he studies. What's the word Yoshev? What does it mean? He sits and he learns. Why is it necessary? And what does it mean? So that was a second question. And to answer this, he starts explaining the 3 ideas in Torah, but he focuses first on the first idea of Yegiah, effort in Torah. Haskin atzcho limul Torah. Prepare yourself. She'ena Yerushalach. Because this level of Torah is not an inheritance, but rather it comes through effort. And then he brings a pasuk in the Torah, and the Chazal say, "V'zois Torah ha'adam." This is the Torah of Adam. Ki yamas be'oil. And regarding the laws of ritual contamination, tum and tara, and the Chazal say that we take the word "V'zois Torah Adam ki yamas." How can you acquire Torah if Adam ki yamas? If you, man, will kill yourself for Torah? Will you sacrifice yourself for Torah? And the explanation is shemasagiv atzmai, meaning a person kind of pains himself by giving away their will of and desire for gashmis, for material and corporeal matter, for the sake of learning Torah. And that's why it says meimis atzmai. So this is what we learned last week, and from there the Rebbe went on to explain how the Yetzer Hara, again, in other words, when you look at a solution, you're telling me that the issue is that I need to sacrifice myself. What is the issue that I need to sacrifice myself from? So that's why he starts explaining what the issue is. And the issue is the Yetzer Hara. The issue is the Nefesh Habamis. So this is where we're up to, in middle of 349. It's about 12, 13 lines from the top, in middle of the page. What is the advice that Chazal give? Schlep the Yetzer Hara into the shul, into the Beis Medrash. To the place of Torah. The Beis HaKnesses Mekayim HaTfilah, Beis HaMikdash Mekayim HaTorah. A shul is a place of tefillah, and a Beis Medrash is a place of Torah. This is just a halachic kind of distinction between the two. And by the way, there are halachic differences between the two, but not for now. When you say the word moshcheu, the Gemara says moshcheu, and I told you the etymology of the word moshcheu is moshach, mem shin chof, right? Schlep, pull. We translate it in Talmudic terms as meaning acquisition. Acquire yourself the Yetzer Hara through bringing him to the Beis Medrash. How do you acquire him? The Rebbe says bidvarim. You have to talk to him. If you don't talk to Yetzer Hara, if you don't talk, you're not engaging. It's a fleeting, thoughtful wish, but you're not really engaging. You have to talk it out. And by the way, I don't mean talk it out necessarily with words, even in machshava, but in thought, but to articulate the idea. This is what you're doing. You tell him what you're doing, and this is why it's not proper, and this is what I want it to change. Let's see what he says. V'loi maloi, tell the Yetzer Hara, shuadai to the nafshe. Speak to it according to your own nefesh, your own soul. In other words, be honest with yourself. Don't fake it. Good morning, afternoon, Rabbi Yehuda. Don't fake it. Say it the way it is. Because remember, it's to yourself. To yourself, no one's listening. Your wife, your kids, your friends, your rabbi, no one. So you could be honest, at least with yourself. To begin with, when a person does something with his honesty of his heart, his soul, he does it that way. To correct his nefesh habamis. Okay, so he's twisting here. He's giving a little different twist to the Chazal. Listen to what he's saying. He's saying that, in other words, you say like this: Yetzer Hara, you want me to go and go to the movies all day and play golf and sleep to 13 hours and waste my time. I got a problem with that. You know why? I have to work for a living so I can have money to buy food. I need to study because I want to get a degree. So when I get a degree, I'll get a better job and better pay. Now that's not Lishma. In other words, what's the reason, Yonason? What's the reason I don't want the Yetzer Hara to disturb me? It's because, why? It's because I won't benefit. So this is what we call Hillel Mitoich Shalei Lishma Bo Lishma. Says the Rebbe, it's okay. It's okay to begin your dealings with the Yetzer Hara with Shalei Lishma, because from Shalei Lishma, ultimately you'll come Lishma. The paid Lishma, what does it mean, Lishma? L'shem HaTorah. Now this is very important because there are different meanings of Lishma. There's Reb Chaim Volozhin and Nefesh HaChaim has his understanding, the Alter Rebbe has his understanding of Pedekei and Tanya, but the Rebbe here says Lishma overall means I want to learn for the sake of learning. I don't learn so my wife will say, my husband's such a great guy, he's going to Koilo. I don't learn because my kids should know their father is learning. I don't learn to get rabbinic ordination, smicha. Those are all legitimate reasons, but it's shaloi lishma. It's not for the sake of Torah, it's for something else that later will, in Yitz Hashem, enhance the Torah, but it's still shaloi lishma. So the Rebbe says, we have a rule, Chazal say, mitoich shaloi lishma, bo lishma. For you begin learning not for the sake of purity of just learning Torah because it's Hashem's Torah, and that ultimately will lead that you will learn Torah for the sake of Torah. Are you here? Lahamshich oirin sof b'Torah. What does it mean, Shmuel, to learn Torah l'shma for the sake of Torah? And the Rebbe here, without saying it, really puts the kind of Chabad emphasis. What it means to learn Torah l'shma means to draw God into the Torah. Not to draw myself. Anything that's about myself, stinks. It's ego. Okay? So when we talk about learning Torah l'shma, that level, that idea, it's not about I. It's about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That when you learn Torah, Hashem says you draw the Ein Sof, which means the infinite God, into Torah. That's the Hasidic classification of l'shma. I'm telling you clearly, not all shittas and methods of Torah would define it this way. But the way Chabad Chasidus sees l'shma, this is what genuine Torah learning is. In other words, like this. I want to just clarify a little more. You could learn Torah, you say, I'm not learning to be a rabbi. I'm not learning to get a better job. I'm not learning my wife should like me better and my kids should respect me better. That's not what I'm learning. I'm learning I should know more Hashem's Torah. That too has some ego. Who are you? I should know. Who are you? No. I'm learning because God wants this. God will be more present in the world. And he needs me to learn. Because if I don't open my mouth and take a sefer, that's the way it won't happen. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not he needs me, he wants me to do this. So I become his long hand, long mouth, long thought. It's a whole different orientation versus I'm learning so I should have more knowledge. That is also not l'shma, according to the Alter Rebbe and the Lubavitcher Rebbeim and Chabad Chasidus. And it's a lofty, it's a lofty objective. But if you think about it, I think, and who am I again? But it's the real McCoy. It's the real McCoy. To learn for the sake of learning because we want God in the world. It's all about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Never, ever lose that nekudah. Whatever we do, it's about the Eibishter. And that's why, just going back to Rabbi Malinowitz's passing, it's about God. Yes, we humans feel a loss, and the family feels a loss, and it is a loss, absolutely. But it's only a loss because God says it's a loss. And in other words, and because he was a disseminator of Torah and a teacher of Torah and a man of Torah, so what we are sad about is that seemingly godliness has been lessened. That's what hurts us. And the process of Shiva and Shleishim and the year is such that we say God, and godliness has not lessened, and therefore, how? Because as the Rebbe said about his own wife, Rebbe Chaim Mushke, the heart will pay attention and will bring the through our good deeds, and that was the Rebbe's message the whole year. I'll take all your questions. Give me just 1 second or comments. The whole year, 1988. When the Rebbe Chaim Mushke, the Rebbe's wife, you saw in the beginning, especially a sadness on his face, and his wife is for so many years. But what he spoke from the very first day, when he spoke, it was about the following words: "V'hachai yitain a living," and the living yitain a liboy will make the heart be attentive. In other words, what can we do now? What must we do now to make the dead be alive? How do you make the dead be alive? Do something. Name a building after her. Learn Torah for her neshama. Etc., etc. Let's go in order. Yoni first, and then Moshe, and then Hillel. That's the way I saw the questions.
I was for Moshe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Yoni, you go first. Yeah, you want to say yeah? No. You're older, Moshe. You're older. Go ahead.
Someone said, and I probably would disagree with this, but I heard it said when Rabbi Malinowitz passed away, this kind of thing, the loss, it's a makkah. It's a punishment for a 12.
Sorry, I don't accept that. It's not a Jewish way of thinking. It's negative and it's ridiculous. I don't want to go into it now. It's totally, no one is in a position, no one, who is on a level that they know that this is a makkah. Moshe, stay away from that type of thinking because it'll only bring you depression. Finished.
That's what I felt, but I wanted to hear from you. I wanted to hear from you.
You heard it from me loud and clear. No, I don't mince words.
It was at the Hesped,
Rabbi, it was at the Hesped, sir.
I don't care. I still disagree. Who am I? I'm saying it's such a, we know it's a loss. Of course it's a loss. But to go say it's a makkah. I mean, what kind of words are there? This is like, I don't want to get into it. Don't get me started, please. I'm writing a book now about Chabad and Litvaks. My next book is going to be a bestseller. It's about Chabad and Litvaks. Over there, you'll have enough information. It's not. This is not a Chasidus. Forget about a Chasidus. Forget about Chasidus. It's not a healthy way of thinking. And we finished that. We had our makkah already in the Holocaust. Finished. Geendigt. We went through what we had to go through, and even then, the Frierdiker Rebbe told the Satmar Rav. The Satmar Rav came to the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, our author, in 48 and 49, and he said what you just said, that he feels that the Holocaust was a punishment for the assimilation. And the previous Rebbe said to him, don't make God right. Okay? And the Satmar Rav was a big person. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was also a great person.
Ask you, what does it mean, Rabbi? Shmuel is asking, what does that mean?
What does what mean?
Don't make God right.
What does it mean, don't make God right?
In other words, Hashem brought a Holocaust. We don't understand it. And you're finding reasons why he brought the Holocaust is not justified. Yidden were killed. They're all Kedoshi Ellen. They all went on Mesiras Nefesh. The Chassam Sofer Paskins. Anyone that's killed by the Goyim is a Kaddish. It's a psak of the Chassam Sofer, who wasn't a Chassid, etc., etc. And in fact, the Satmar Rav, by them, the Chassam Sofer is God himself. Right? They go by the psak of the Chassam Sofer. So the Chassam Sofer said, the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't say this, but the Rebbe said this in 1985 regarding the Rabbi Shach in Bnei Brak, who said that the reason that there was issues there, the Holocaust was because of the sinners. And I remember that Fabrenga, I heard it while I was in California. The Rebbe was storming, and he quoted the psak of the Chassam Sofer. So I'm saying, to say Rabbi Malinowitz's passing is a makkah because of assimilation, this is like, to me it's like, it's, what's the word, there's a word in English, it's like when you give up. Fatalism? What is it called? Like...
There is a word, fatalism.
Fatalism, right? Right, that would be the word. Yeah, it's a fatalism. Anyway, Yoni, go ahead.
Okay, so according to what the Rebbe is saying, and we've learned this, Chazal, Lo Lishma, Bo Lishma.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the concept and everything. But from this mimer, when the Rebbe is talking about how what we've learned, that whatever we're supposed to do is for Hashem and not for ourselves, and take ourselves out of the equation, I think it's a beautiful thing. But I think that today we see people today that are so sucked into the Lo Lishma, where they want to be part of a system. They want to be part of the shidduchim scene. They worry about the hat and jacket because in 18 years from now, their daughters have to get married. And you should know, Rabbi Malinowitzz spoke about this in shul a few times. People are getting sucked into the things that are low lishma, and lishma goes by the side of the road, meaning people are not doing it for Hashem. They may be doing it for their children, they may be doing it for their own honor, or they want the neighbors, or they get support. The Rebbe helps them, the community helps them.
Right.
And then they act, it's like keeping up with the Harrys, keeping up with the Joneses. They have the terminology like that. Dress like this or dress like that, and you're a Harry or you're a Jones or whatever there is.
Right.
Like they lose sight of
right, right, and I agree. However, The flip side is not to be a pariah and not to be an outcast. That's not the answer. Rabbi Malinowitz still wore a jacket, and a hat. You know what I'm saying? There is appropriateness. There's something called derech eretz. But you're right. Doing it because of the Jones is not l'shma. Absolutely. And, you're strengthening the point. You're not arguing with the point. But Yoini, like this. The Gemara says, it's a Gemara. Rabbi Malinowitz didn't argue with the Gemara. This means that the Rambam paskins, you train a person as a child, you give him first candies. Today they would give him carrots. You give him first carrots. After in the Rambam's time, he had no problem with sweets, so he didn't write carrots. He wrote candies. He didn't write, but that's what he meant. Anyway, after that, you give him toys. And after toys, you give him honor. And after honor, you give him something else. And that's all Shalei Lishma. Says the Rambam, that's acceptable, because from that he will come to Lishma. So what we understand, Yaini, is that if a person is weak, and we are weak, this answers the question, I think, one answer to your issue. The issue you're mentioning, not your issue, the issue you're mentioning. People want to belong. People want to belong. Story. When I came to Marin County, I had a group of Balabatim. Some were Shomer Shabbos, some were not. There were three. One in particular was not fully Shomer Shabbos. He would drive to shul at that time. He stopped later. I mean, we were davening, and everyone's wearing a gartel. These three Balabatim. And, wait a minute. A gartel? A gartel is a Hasidic thing to wear outside. You're Shomer Shabbos, you wear a gartel. You're not frum, you're driving a Shabbos and you wear a gartel? Like, at that time, in my books coming from Crown Heights, from Borough Park, it doesn't add up. You don't wear a gartel if you don't keep Shabbos. And so one of the other two guys, and it really bothered me. I was very upset. I didn't and he called me aside, he said, listen, we are like a fraternity. A brother, in the Reformed Conservative, they have the brotherhoods, this is where we're at. We're not, we didn't learn in yeshiva. We're coming to this. For us, a sense of belonging is very important. And I saw that he was right. Because the gartel eventually turned into him keeping Shabbos. People want to belong, you understand? And the fact is, that why did they go to the Mir Yeshiva? Reuven has his son and in Mir Yeshiva, and I'm talking, okay, so the Litvaks go to Mir, I understand. There's 300 Chasidus Bacharim from Borough Park and Williamsburg and Muncie. Their fathers wear streimels, they have the krazel to payers with everything, and the Langa Reklach, and they're in Mir. What are you doing in Mir? You should be in a Chasidus Yeshiva. Belz doesn't have a yeshiva. Ger doesn't have a yeshiva. Chabad doesn't have a yeshiva. The answer is, they want to be able to say on their resume that they learned by Rav Arieli. Rav Arieli is the most fantastic Rav Arieli at Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. Rav Arieli. And if they could write, yes?
Back up a little, because you flipped out for about 30 seconds.
I said that all these Bacharim, 300 Chasidus Bacharim, they have entire chaburas, groups, in the Mir, and Mir is a Litvish yeshiva. What are they doing there? What, Belz, Baviv, Satmar, Lubavitch, there's not enough yeshivas, both American and Eretz Yisrael? No. They want to be able to say on their resume, when it comes to that they learned by Rav Arieli. Now, Rav Arieli is a gewaldige Magid Shir teacher. He is. Now, so you're going to say, Yoni, they're keeping up with the Joneses. On one hand, they are. On the other hand, they're learning L'Poel Torah. And so what I'm saying is you have to really discern what the issue is. You can't put it all in one bag. And I've seen people who go to the opposite extreme within the frum world, And it also doesn't lead to good, results. Like, I'm going to show everybody that I don't have to belong to a system. I can do it, the way I want. That's also not Lishma. If you think that's Lishma, it's not Lishma. That's for your ego. Because you have a type A or a personality or whatever, and you want to rebel against society. You want to rebel against your parents. You want to rebel against your community. So you say, I could dress the way I want and come to shul. And in a Chabad house and in a Chabad shul, no one's going to throw me out. Everyone's accepted. It's true, everyone's accepted. But don't think for a moment that in a Chabad shul, you go over to the Amid or you go to the Torah dressed just the way you are. L'poil, if someone comes in, we hug him and we invite him and we work with him. But is that the way the Rebbe and the Chabad Rebbes wanted their shul to be? No. They wanted people to come in respectfully. Now, a person doesn't know. We provide yarmulkes, and we provide shawls, and we help you with the bracha, and we hug you, and we fabreng with you. And the Rebbe always said, and I heard this from him thousands of times, that when it comes to working with a Baal Teshuvah, from the beginning, you have to tell them there's 613 mitzvahs. I know you're not there, because you got to do the first mitzvah, number 1. But you should know the 613. And I can tell you, as someone who's worked in this field for 40 years, I can tell you that I've been told by people who confided in me, they were upset, they weren't told by their rabbi or their shliach, whatever, that there's this and this and this, and they found out only 20 years later, and they were very upset. So it's not something just to, shove out the window, and I'm convinced Rabbi Malinowitz would agree with me. I'm convinced that's not what he meant. Because you see from his own life, on one hand, he was very open-minded, accepting of others and other systems. At the same time, he was steeped in the tradition of Yiddishkeit and of his Yiddishkeit, which was basically a Litvische tradition. At the end of the day, he wasn't a Chassid. He was a Litvische, and I know I have stories with that too. And that's fine. That was the tradition that he chose. So like I had a few weeks ago on the clips, Rabbi Yosef Feinstein. So someone wrote in, because I spoke so highly of the relationship between Rabbi Yosef Feinstein and the Rebbe. So someone wrote in, a good friend of mine, a Talmud Chacham, Rabbi Yosef was a chassid. So I wrote back, Rabbi Yosef was not a chassid. It's factually wrong. And I cited a story in 1939 with Ramosha and a Lubavitch Rabbi Jacobson, and it's printed, and I didn't write it, and it was the person who was there printed it. I don't want to repeat it now. And the kid said this, he was not a chassid. I'm sorry. He was not a chassid. He was a gewaldige yid, a Talmud Chacham, a Pesach, and every. But don't all of a sudden create a new reality. It's not. And the same is over here. So, and nevertheless, this yid was committed. Anyway, Rabbi Yisai, we're going to go. Sei gesund, everyone. We'll learn.